Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Uh, this is episode number 46 of the Unboxing AI webinar series. Today we have with us a very, very special guest, Mads from Radiobotics, but we'll come to that. For those of you who don't know, this is the Unboxing AI webinar series. We do this every Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, no matter what. And this is by CARPL. If you don't know what CARPL is, we are an imaging AI, enterprise imaging AI platform connecting the whole world of fantastic AI developers such as Radiobotics to clinical workflows, helping build, test, deploy, and monitor AI in the clinical realm for radiologists. And yeah, enough about us. So today we have my good friend Mads. We normally just meet each other at alcohol-related events at various conferences all over the world. So excited to finally talk shop with Mads. I generally leave that dirty work to Dhruv and Kritika and the team. So Mads, thank you so much for coming. Means a lot. Quick intro of Mads. His bio that he sent is extremely humble. So we'll go a little deep, Mads, in our conversation in your background.
Yeah.
But he's the co-founder and CEO of Radiobotics, trained biomedical engineer, holds a master's degree in both medicine and technology from the Technical University of Denmark and UC Berkeley. And he was an orthopedic researcher at Imperial College London, and then co-founded Radiobotics from that. Of course, now an award-winning medtech company in the world of MSK radiology. So, Mads, what was how did so first? Yes, of course, I need to ask you, what do you do? As if you were telling a 5-year-old kid.
No, thanks for the introduction, Vidur, and good to see you as well in a professional manner. It's it's great, and thanks for the introduction as well to into my resume. It's great, and it's great to be here. And thanks everybody for joining and listening into our conversation here for the next half an hour. So I guess I want to focus on what Radiobotic does mostly. Then we can speak about my free time at another point. But Radiobotics, we are an AI radiology company focusing on MSK radiology. But if I have to take it down to the 5-year-old, I think you can imagine that you fall over on your bicycle and you like injure your hand or your shoulder or your elbow, and then it hurts, and then you need to go to the hospital to get that checked. Then you get into the emergency department, and then in most of the cases, most hospitals will take an X-ray to confirm or to uh, reaffirm that there's no fracture or there is some kind of trauma in the image. So basically, what Radiobotics do is that we assist the hospitals, the physicians that are in the emergency department, in not overlooking important findings that should not be missed if you have suffered some kind of trauma where you use X-rays to detect it. Um,
Yeah, I think 5-year-olds will understand that. I think
I
so.
tried at least to.
Yeah, no, when my kids were 5, they understood what an X-ray was. So maybe.
Yeah, maybe
But no, but Mads, so getting to Radiobotics, what all does Radiobotics do? How did it come to be? What's the journey been like? I'm sure everybody here would love to know.
sure. I tried to do it brief. So, I mean, Radiobotics was founded as a combination, I guess, from my background both in biomedical research and biomedical engineering, specialized in medical imaging. And then also from me working in an orthopedic research department called the MSK Lab, where I worked every day with NHS doctors at a hospital in London. So I got to learn a lot about the clinical environment and the clinical reality, and also got a lot of patient interaction from that, and also saw how orthopedics were using imaging in their day-to-day life of preparing surgeries or doing diagnosis and or being part of the emergency workflow as well. So that was back in a time where it was very early days, I think, for radiology AI, but there was a lot of interest in research and a lot
And
of.
when was it, Mads? What year did you guys start?
We started in 2017.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Um, Yeah,
Incredible.
a
Nice.
good year. No, but there was a lot of research and a lot of interest back in those days. So it was kind of an obvious thing to look at from a research perspective with like, can you do something with AI or machine learning, deep learning, the technology, it's terminology we used also back then, I guess, for it. So I guess I'm a technology enthusiast. So I basically wanted to see what can we do with the technology into the images, and are there some of the processes that I have observed that could be better and basically automated, because I saw that it was time consuming, some of it, and then there was also discrepancy between how the different physicians reviewed the images. Sometimes the orthopedics didn't agree with the radiologist, and that I thought there must be some kind of objective truth in the middle here where maybe technology can help on that. That was basically kind of the very brief inspiration for it. But then wanted to set up a company and trying to figure out what's then the best use case. I wanted it to be something where I had a network and some knowledge within. So we wanted to be like an MSK imaging AI company.
Hmm. Hmm.
Then we started out by building the first tool for knee osteoarthritis. Back then, that was based on the local feedback and the partners and the data we had to build that, and that's kind of how it started out. But we, from the day one, we always wanted to be MSK AI. So one of the products we had in our roadmap was on fracture detection, because it's kind of an obvious case within in terms of how much volume and how often it's missed in the radiology departments or in the emergency department specifically. So we eventually came to build that, which is our flagship product today, called RB Fracture, which can detect uh, fractures and other findings relevant in the emergency workflow to increase the quality and efficiency turnaround time in the workflow, including emergency department, orthopedics, and radiology departments.
So, Mads, how far is the day when uh, an X-ray machine will, uh, you know, give a fracture or no fracture output, and we will trust it blindly?
I think it's, I think where the AI is right now, you can choose to trust it blindly, but I think it's important that there is like a quality mechanism in the loop with a human being, because it is, at least our tool is classified as a decision support tool, and that's how it's intended to be used. But I can definitely see into the future with the volume going up and the resources going down that you have to make some decision about where the technology needs to take over. And I think something like finding things in plain films like X-ray, it's obvious to look if there are cases where you can then bypass some of the human interactions in that. So I
So
think it.
if I was to rephrase the question, Mads, a little bit, like from a, let's just take fracture detection, right? Uh, what is it that what type of scans is it that AI is really good at, and then what type of scans is it where uh, you would say, okay, maybe we would definitely always need human oversight. Like, is it even possible to make that distinction right now?
To some extent, you can make a risk assessment of where does it have the largest impact if the AI is wrong, or the
Hmm.
least impact from the risk point of view. So that's also what we've seen with some of our customers, that they actually choose to
Oh,
use
interesting. Hmm.
the AI with the low risk assessments to basically discharge a patient. There will still be a human in the loop that does the overread of the X-ray, but it doesn't need to be right away in the emergency room. For example, for like a hand fracture, like that's not severe. If the emergency physician says there's no fracture, our solution says there's no fracture, then you can move on in the workflow and
Hmm.
discharge the patient. So I think it's a kind of a risk question, where in other cases you will rather have a human being to look at it if it's a very fragile patient, for example, or something that could lead to a deterioration of the patient's health very fast, such as hip.
What you're saying is it is less a question of uh, what is the AI good at or not good at, but more a question of what if the AI goes wrong, what are the implications to a patient? That's what you're saying, right? Having that risk kind of perspective.
Well, both yes and no, because I think it needs to be in the areas where we know the AI is good. But then the next step is like, are you willing to then, as a hospital, to live with the risk if the AI doesn't find it? And
Hmm.
then that's kind of the risk assessment. And what are the mechanisms you put in to like for the quality assessment to ensure that you didn't find it maybe the day after or like later in the patient journey.
Nice. And what's next on the roadmap? Whatever you can share. Like I know you've got, RB knee, you've got RB fracture. What else?
No, so in Radiobotics, we're really focusing on being like really good in the emergency workflow and
Hmm.
really, really deep in that and wants to be the best in that area. So we keep on pushing the boundaries for how well it works for all the different anatomies, all for the different age groups and the different clinical features you can detect. And that's what we are continue to work on that I can share for now. But we are staying in that area and basically wanted to build the best product that you can build trust in, and then over time maybe automate some of the workflow more and more with the accuracy going up for it.
Got it. Nice. So, another thing, and we were talking about this, Matt, just prior to starting the webinar, that's a different thread, but very close to kind of our heart. And I'm sure we share, certain perspectives there is, so you are based in Denmark, right? But you're selling all over the world. Uh, how?
I mean, I think one thing is I guess, the practical implementation of how, many steps to that. But I think the most important thing to start with is the problem we're addressing with the products a global problem or not, or a local problem. And I think, luckily for us, so to speak, is that everybody, every human being has bones, and all over the world people fall, and all over the world you use X-ray as the main modality to detect trauma, injuries, and fractures. And it's a very persistent problem. People keep on getting injuries over time, and it's also very persistent. We assume that you use X-ray to do that. So at least that's a good kind of first step to say that it's a global, everlasting problem, so to speak. So we can address it from a global perspective. But then we have to say, then how do we do it? For us, we started out like in Europe with the CE mark, because when it's a medical device, you of course need the regulatory clearance. But then we slowly built that out by getting more and more approvals in different countries as we get partnerships or we see customer interest in it. And then it could be through a partner, or it can be in other ways. So like one of the ways we scale to other geographies is, for example, through partnerships like with CARPL, where we have sites in different territories that we would never be able to get to ourselves, such as the study we've done together in Singapore.
Yeah.
It's something that we would not have been able to get to ourselves because we don't have anyone locally in that market at the moment. So I think that's actually part of the answer is actually you in the, in this.
So that was I promised the listeners that was not the intent, but yeah, cool to be mentioned. But like going one level deeper, like Mads, like we live in a competitive world, right? And there are companies coming out of the Bay Area. There's companies coming out of London, other parts of Europe, and then Southeast Asia, and we're essentially trying to go into other people's markets and dominate them. Like tactically speaking, is there something also in the Denmark ecosystem that enables this? Are there other companies that have done it before? Like I tell you where I'm coming from, because in India, over the past 5 to 10 years, there's been this movement of like software companies building in India for the world. Like earlier, India had this great, still has, some of the world's largest services, IT services companies, right? The Infosys, TCS, all of these, Citius Tech and all, billions of dollars worth of large companies, and now it's people from there. There's a like a sales playbook, growth playbook that you kind of replicate. Does that happen in Denmark as well? Like, uh, or are you a rare company that is building in Denmark for the world? Like, excuse my ignorance about it, but I would love to
No worries.
hear.
No worries. Everybody in the world is allowed to be ignorant about such a small country like Denmark, so that's not a problem at all. No, I mean it's I can speak to how I know it is in Denmark, and then I don't know a lot about the other countries, but I think we have a very strong tradition for life science companies in general in
Hmm.
Denmark. So there's like talent and people are interested in building technology or biotechnology or medicine. Like so that area is kind of a big hub in Denmark. Then we have high educational level of the population. You know, one of the part of the Danish welfare system is access to free education and university and so forth. So you also get a relatively good workforce. Then on the structural part, you also
The
have a
college is free.
yes,
Oh, wow. That is incredible. Nice.
and you even get paid to study. Like you get a monthly allowance while doing it, which I think
Wow.
is relatively unique. But then I think it's also kind of the social security aspect, not necessarily for getting benefits, but just by having like a safety net, meaning that people are maybe willing to take some more risk.
Yeah.
For example, in like leaving their job and creating a company, or taking a job that not necessarily on like a very strong career path where they take a risk of trying to build something or going into research and so forth. So I think those are kind of some of the structural things that mean that Denmark can get leading companies in different areas because of those things of high education and good
Yeah.
workforce and like a willingness to take risk, I think, or like a possibility to do it, I think maybe is the
Yeah, that is very interesting, right? Like when you have not much to lose, you take more risk, right? So, and that's very interesting. We've started, getting some questions in that. So let's switch to that. The first is, in the chat box by Dr. Suresh Mukherjee. So Suresh is one of the world's leading neuroradiologists. He asks, are you able to adjust the diagnostic accuracy of the algorithm such that fracture detection is optimized for a high negative predictive value, which will facilitate fracture screening? Or is the algorithm locked into a specific diagnostic accuracy for all users based on the training data?
so I mean, it's a good question. Thanks for it. And the answer is a little bit annoying because it depends. But so in theory, we are, but we need to then talk to the clinic, understand it, and do the documentation behind it. But out of the get-go, we made a decision about where we think the like cutoff should be for that to be able to fit into like the typical customer workflow we see in an emergency department. That's how kind of we balance it
Does it
with the
also vary by geography, Mads? Like, I think the FDA has a different take on thresholds and the CE has a. Can you talk about that?
So no, for us it doesn't vary. We want to have the same product
Okay.
globally for it.
Oh, that's interesting. So your products are identical whether they're US or Europe or anywhere
Yeah, the,
else.
the, the things that can vary is what you have regulatory clearance to market. So there could be specific features or specific anatomies, for example, that you can only activate in specific markets. But the base model and the performance and the cutoff and the threshold and the sensitivity, specificity, and so forth is the same, no matter what geography. Um,
Interesting. And so let's say there is a customer that wants to change the threshold outside of a research environment, that is probably not possible.
it's possible, but it's
I
not
mean,
actually.
like technically possible, but you would avoid doing it. Like,
Yes, I mean we would put default like to like use the model that we have validated and that has gone through all the clinical research and be able to rely on that. But on a case by case level, we need to then be able to discuss and then maybe we can add it to our documentation or add another class to it in our next release. But it's not like a feature out of the get-go.
interesting. Nice. Next, we've got a couple of questions. First is from my colleague Sarthi. Sarthi asks, RB fracture covers both adult and pediatric cases. Does it mean these are two models that run based on the age that's passed through, or is there just one solution? When developing it, what are the considerations before considering one approach over the other in terms of sampling and accuracy?
So it's one model that covers like all anatomies and
Oh, wow.
all ages from 2 and above in our model. So it basically goes into one model, one Docker to be analyzed, where you basically just get the diagram sent and then we send the output back. But in our algorithm, we do have some filtering mechanisms to look, for example, for age, for image quality, and for anatomy and for view position. So we can
Hmm.
use that to like make some routing inside the algorithm towards optimizing. For example, for we have different cutoffs for different anatomies inside the model, so we can use that to route it based on the uh, image and the view position, and we can reject it if we don't support it. And that can also be customized for the customers if there are specific rejections that they don't want to have analyzed for some reason.
So
Then
that
sometimes,
means when and I'm sure somebody on my team would definitely know this, but so when the image goes into the Docker, age is a part of the age part of the metadata is also required to go in, or do you look at the X-ray and identify the age?
no, that's from the input from the the
Input.
diagram header, I would assume, and then we can reject if we don't support it, meaning that if it's below 2 years, which is very low volume, luckily,
Yeah,
uh,
it's
in that
like
area.
there's hardly any bones. So next is, do you have, so somebody who doesn't want to be named, it's a good question though. Do you have any learning and development initiatives, or do you partner with some learning and development provider for your end users to improve the adoption of your AI tools? So this is for radiologists.
So we have, I mean, we like to be very close to the customer sites, and if possible, also go and visit when we do the deployment to understand the clinical workflow and to train them and ensure they use the product in the right way. So we offer comprehensive training if they want it, but the product is also very simple to understand. It's a copy of an X-ray where we highlight where there's a clinical finding. It's quite intuitive to understand from that perspective. So we do have processes in place on how we do the training and how people learn about the product, and we're very transparent about performance and where what anatomies it covers, what age groups, and so forth as part of it. And we have training material, we have different manuals and guides. We even have like one pages you can print out, laminate, and put on the wall so you can easily understand that. So we have all of that set up quite well, and even also like an online support like universe where you can also go in and download and look at all the documentation. So I think we're
Interesting.
doing that quite comprehensively to ensure you understand the product in the right
So,
way.
and Matt's taking that one step further, like uh, how do you take feedback from the radiologists?
So we do that by being present with them, or by
Hmm.
having like support tickets or like email or calls and so forth, and then we log that and follow the procedures we both want to, but also the one we have to be compliant on how we manage that.
Interesting. Nice. Because, as I'm sure as the company grows, congratulations on the TGA approval we all saw. Uh yes, this is Dr. Avnish Khare writes, wow, love the answer by being present with them. It's interesting that many companies are not present. So
I think it's an important point, you need to be close to the users to actually
yeah.
understand them, right?
Yeah, no, and I'm sure you guys do a fantastic job of that. There is one more question that has come in. Very very broad, big question, but I would love your thoughts on it. How do you address the issue of generalizability? Actually, I think it's lack of generalizability. So, what are mechanisms? How do you train your models differently? Like whatever you can share, Matt. It's like uh, because you mentioned you use the same model everywhere in the world. So, how do you make sure it works?
I mean, our approach to do this is basically by how we train the model and what data we train it on, and then also how we validate it on it. So we need to know that it works on different, demographics, basically. So one of the things we knew when we have to build the algorithm is that we need a very large, very diverse data set that had like all that variation into it of different, like yeah, demographics of the patients. So that has been our approach to it, and it has worked relatively well. because then the next part, once you do that, and then that's an assumption that it then works on, like, in different countries, for example, on different population groups, on different ages, on different genders and so forth. Then so the next part is, of course, putting it out to a test and then testing it in different clinical environments. And luckily, we've seen for the clinical studies we've done that it then also works like that. For example, a study in Singapore, or we did in Brazil, in the UK, in 3 different sites in Europe, and it all generalizes basically to the same accuracy. So I think it's about testing it and validating it. It has been
So,
our.
and Mads, if say hypothetically, if you're deploying at a customer site and the customer asks you, what data did you train the algorithm on? Like, how do you answer that question? Because, it's such a broad question. And many times, in RFPs and RFIs, there is that question, like, please share details of data used to train the algorithm. So how do you answer that?
Well, we answer it by like a documentation that we have on it. So like in our pitch, we have a slide for it, so we can show it and be transparent about it.
So
So
it's
we
like
can
number of scans and like body
number of scans,
parts.
number of hospitals, number of, like, different age distribution, for example, um, different machine distribution, that kind of stuff we have. And we have also some more detailed, if it's part of a like tender submission or regulatory
Yeah.
submission, then we will have like a whole like document that explains all of the complexity of
And
the.
and how important, Mads, and this is a controversial question, but there are like 5,000 X-ray manufacturers out there, right? So I'll give you an example from India, right? One of the biggest X-ray companies in India is a company called Allengers. And I am fairly certain that it may not have been part of your training data set, right? So if I am an Allengers customer and I ask you that question that, hey, show me your training data, or whatever you can, Allengers is just an example, but like it will turn out that okay, data from India or data from Allengers was not part of the training set. So does that mean it will not work for me, or does that just mean that I should do one more extra round of validation, or like how do you address that question?
I mean, I think I would probably start to ask about if there's anything that makes the way they use the X-ray technology unique, in terms of, do they use different technology, different ways of filtering, exposure, positioning, or anything like that? Because if
Hmm.
it is like, if the end result after taking the X-ray is like a digitized standard X-ray, then I'm pretty sure it will work. But then the way to validate it is to put it to a test. And then what we've done to make that easy is also we made a free online demo platform where you can go in and test it and do that kind of validation just to see it. So you can just go on demo.radiobotics.com and upload it and test it. But because we used like so much data with like hundreds of different machine manufacturers in the training data, and all the validations we've done generalized to the same, then we are normally pretty confident. But of course, we have to put it up to a test if anyone is in doubt.
Interesting, nice. Uh, no, that's beautifully answered, right? There's the demo platform. Go there, check for yourself, right? Yeah, pretty powerful. Last question from Himanshu Makkar. How do you guys balance the speed of innovation with the rigor of compliance and validation? I think that's
Oh,
the
I mean, it's a
what
good question,
compliance?
and it's a big question. No, I think what we build needs to be clinically applicable, and it needs to be something that someone is willing to use and willing to pay for using as well. So I think it's a balance between being like too optimistic on using new technology that no one wants to use, or at least trying to predict what is the right time where it's actually possible, both from the infrastructure level, from the clinical acceptance of it, from the regulatory pathway and risk. Is it possible to generate evidence for it and so forth? So it's trying to map these things out, including is there willingness to adopt it and use it and pay for it in the end, and then trying to kind of we try to make some matrices where we assess this and say, is this a bit too much ahead of the curve, or are we hitting it in the right way? So it's difficult to come up with a generic answer for, but that's the thoughts we have when we look at it. So at least for the current flagship product we have, we're saying, okay, this is a persistent problem that's relevant because it's the one of the cases that's the most common in emergency departments of misses, and we're seeing that the adoption is going well, and people are starting to implement this, and they love the product. So this is what we want to focus on right now, getting this out to the rest of the world and doing it as good as we can, and not being too excited about what else it can do. Just, you solve this use case.
I think that is a fantastic note to end on. That when you've built something with some hypothesis in mind and you know it's working, go out and sell it first, and later think about improving it and the future and all that. No, perfect. Thank you so much, Mads. Means a lot. And thank you to everyone for joining. Yeah, see you here next week, same time. Perfect. See you.
Thanks so much,
Thanks,
Vidur.
Mads.
Pleasure. Thanks,
Thank you so
everybody.
much. Thank you.